Welcome to OLC 4.0, Term 1A, Class number 10, Assignment number 13, and we're looking at compound and complex sentences today, and I am Jillian Percy. Just a heads up, this is a recording that will be replayed for tomorrow. This is for tomorrow's class, so the assignments may seem a little bit out of order, just in case. If you are hearing this right now and you're a bit confused, don't worry about it. The next class will be the one you're actually looking for, okay? Same contact information as always. The biggest thing is if you're sending student work, send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. And always, always, always put your full name, course name, assignment number, and name on every assignment, okay? If you're trying to reach me, the best email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. And if you want to listen to these recordings later, they are on YouTube at G, Percy, space WAHSA. So if you go to that YouTube channel and you go to the playlists, don't just go to home, go to playlists. Right here, you'll see 2024, 2025 OLC 40, Term 1A. That is this current term, and I just keep adding videos. Every time I do one, I add it in. Now, it will only have videos for the assignments that we've covered so far. If you're looking for assignments that are ahead of where we are right now, we're only at assignment 13, then you would go back to term 2B or term 2A, and they would have assignments that would cover what you're doing in all likelihood. You can also, of course, give me a phone call. I'd be happy to talk about it with you, but just sometimes people like the details that we go into in the videos. Okay, let's look at our learning goals for today. So by the end of today's class, you will be able to write complete and correct sentences, including how to use conjunctions to write compound and complex sentences. Revise drafts according to ensure that ideas are presented in a logical order. To add details, delete unnecessary information, and to ensure that the tone and level of language is appropriate to the audience and purpose. And then our last one is I can use appropriate strategies to edit written work to achieve accuracy in the use of conventions. Conventions basically means grammar, usage, spelling, and punctuation, okay? So first we're gonna be tackling writing complete and correct sentences and looking at conjunctions. Sentences are kind of like the building block for anything we do. So if you can write a good sentence, you can almost do anything else. And if you're having trouble writing sentences, that could be the trickiest thing that's pulling off other stuff. Okay, there are three main types of conjunctions. There are coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and correlative conjunctions. We're not going to talk about the correlative ones today. We will talk about them on another day because they're a bit tricky. The coordinating ones we've talked about before, I believe, but we'll talk about them again. There are 7 main, I think they're only coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay, we can connect items at the word level with coordinating conjunctions. Every now and again, I have students get confused and think that if they see those, it's automatically a compound sentence, but that's not the case. So if I said, tonight we are eating turkey and mashed potatoes, I'm just joining the two words, turkey and mashed potatoes. I'm connecting them to what we're eating. Becky and Susan are coming over to watch movies. I'm connecting the two names. They're working as a compound subject. He was handsome but mean. The handsome but mean is describing him. It's not a whole new sentence. I would rather swim or read on a hot day. This one is one that will trick people up because it looks so close, right? But I'm talking about swimming or reading, and on a hot day is for either one. Now, this could easily change into being a compound sentence if I added a subject right here. I would rather swim, or I could read on a hot day. Once I add the subject, then I've got a compound sentence. But without it, I'm just basically connecting the words there. Okay, let's look at the next type. This is where you're connecting a phrase. A phrase is just a group of words that does not constitute a full sentence. It doesn't have a subject and a verb, okay? So the new kitten chased the red laser pointer and pounced on the pretend mouse. So I'm telling you two things that the kitten did, but it's all part of the same sentence, okay? She skated with a great deal of speed, but without much precision. Again, I'm still describing how she's skating. It's not a whole new idea. I like to read in the park or at the coffee shop. Both of these phrases are giving me choices about where I read. I cannot pretend to like your new boyfriend nor his odd roommate. Again, it's still all one sentence there, just giving you choices in the phrases. So this is where we've discussed this before and we're discussing it again. When you use those coordinating conjunctions at the sentence level, the new thing that you're creating is called a compound sentence. Every simple sentence in this needs to be an independent clause, right? An independent clause has to have a subject, a verb, and it makes sense all on its own. It could stand on its own with a period and be fine, okay? Here are some examples. I love to go skiing, comma, but I hate skating. The trees are growing nicely, comma, and the flowers are thriving too. He did not get time to finish planting the garden, comma, nor did he get finished fixing the steps as he had promised. We could go to the new movie at the mall, comma, or we could go ice skating at the arena. Now, I'm saying the word comma, obviously when I'm reading this, I wouldn't normally, but I'm saying it to point it out. Normally, if that was a sentence all by itself, I love to go skiing, I would have a period there. I don't have a period because I'm still continuing my sentence, but I put a little comma there to show that I understand it is a complete sentence all by itself. It's taking the place of a period. Then I put my conjunction, then I start my new sentence, and then I put a period when the entire sentence is over, okay? Now, not all clauses are independent clauses. Some are considered what's called a dependent clause. They still have a subject, which is the noun or pronoun that is a topic, and they still have a predicate, which is the verb plus any other words that tell you what's happening in the sentence. The difference is an independent clause can stand on its own as a sentence, but a dependent clause has a subordinating conjunction that creates an incomplete thought and demands that there be another clause to complete it. And it has to be an independent clause. So if I read these, you'll hear it just doesn't sound right. The sentence isn't expressing a complete thought. Unless he brings the money, and then I just stop. But there should be more to that, right? Unless is implying another type of clause. If she says yes, before you put in the eggs, once you finish the car, since you're already mad, each of these ones that are underlined, unless, if, before, once, or since, they're implying either a connection to another phrase or a time frame to another phrase or a condition. So there has to be that other phrase, right? Our brains kind of expect it. It's not a complete sentence without it, okay? So on the next section, here I've added an independent clause. Once you have that dependent clause plus the independent clause, now you have a complex sentence. You're still joining it with a comma, but now you're joining it with a subordinating conjunction. Now, the reason is a dependent clause is sometimes also called a subordinate clause. So a subordinate clause and a subordinate conjunction, they go together, okay? But sometimes dependent clause makes it more clear to people that it's attached to the independent clause, okay? Unless he brings the money, comma, I can't buy the groceries. I am going to marry that girl if she says yes. Now, I want to point out in this first one, unless he brings the money, comma, the reason I've got a comma there is to show that that would be a complete sentence. Now, if the unless came after groceries, if I wrote, I can't buy the groceries unless he brings the money, I don't need a comma there because it just becomes sort of part of the main sentence and it makes more sense there. Because I'm putting this unusual phrase in the front, I put a little comma to kind of indicate, yeah, I know this doesn't quite sound right. Here's the rest of the sentence, essentially. Before you put in the eggs, comma, make sure the pan is hot. Same thing, the comma is there because it doesn't really make sense to start a sentence that way unless you make it clear it's an introductory clause, a sense. We need to mow the lawn once you finish the car. Now, here there's a comma. We don't need it. We need to mow the lawn once you finish the car. I won't mark it wrong if you put it there, but you don't need it because the sentence makes sense. It's still a complex sentence, right? The comma isn't what makes that a complex sentence. It's the second phrase that makes it a complex sentence. Since you're already mad, comma, I might as well tell you I am the one who broke the vase. And again, if I said I might as well tell you I am the one who broke the vase, since you're already mad, I wouldn't need a comma there because it makes sense in terms of the flow of the sentence. Now, there are a lot of subordinating conjunctions. This is a list of some of the possible ones, okay? These are the only way you can join a dependent clause to an independent clause, okay? These are unequal clauses. I've got things like than, rather than, as much as, whether, whereas, or after, as soon as long as, before, by the time, now that, once, since, until, when, whenever, while, who, whoever, whom and whomever, whose and whosever, if, only if, unless, provided that, even if, though, although, and even though. Okay, so here we have some sentences, and look for the subordinating conjunction. Whichever section has the subordinating conjunction in front of it, all the words after that are going to be the subordinate clause, or what we call the dependent clause. So if I look at the first one, after the game was finished, after is very clearly my subordinating conjunction, right? It's giving me a time connection. So the rest of that phrase, until we get to that comma, that's my dependent clause. We went out for pizza could stand all by itself if I didn't have that. But after the game was finished, can't, because that after means there's another action. I did not remember to buy the milk, although I had written it on the grocery list. Okay, do you see the subordinating conjunction there? It's right there in the middle, the although, and all the rest of it, I had written it on the grocery list, becomes your subordinating conjunction. Since he was not there, comma, I was quite upset. I feel like these ones are the easiest ones, where you see the subordinating conjunction at the beginning of the sentence, and then obviously you just go right up to the comma, and there's your subordinating clause. I will give my best effort, even though I am tired. Okay, so my subordinating conjunction is the even though, and then I've got my next sentence, I am tired. That whole thing becomes our subordinate clause. I was not satisfied with my performance in the dance competition, even though our team won first prize. Same thing. Here, there is a comma. I don't necessarily need it, but because it's just a long sentence, it's not inappropriate to have it there, I'll put it that way. All right. I saw a meteor overhead while I was waiting for my ride to pick me up. The while I was waiting for my ride, that becomes our dependent clause because it couldn't stand on its own, right? But you still have a subject, you still have a verb. I went to the snack bar, although I was already full from supper. There's another one where it's kind of smack dab in the middle, and everything after that is part of our dependent clause. Okay. So here is talking about the same clauses, but here it's showing you the types of relationships that these words can show. So if you want to show a causal relationship, like this thing causes this other thing, then I would use the words like as or because or in order, so that, now that, since. Granting concessions is like where like, well, this can happen, but, right, there's a little bit of a contrast. Contrast is, well, no, yeah, contrast works too. Although, as though, even though, just as, whereas, while. Specifying conditions. This is where there's a condition attached to it. Like, yeah, I'll go to the movie even if you don't want me to. Or I will do the dishes if you mow the lawn. In case, provided, or unless. Telling time, where or wherever. Various different temporal relationships. If it is involving time, then it's, well, often a subordinate clause. After, as soon as, before, once, still, until, all those kind of ideas. Comparisons. Comparisons are usually using the word as though, as long as wide as short as heavy as, those kind of things. And then concessions and contrasts are very similar, though, whereas, while, and although, and you can see it uses even some of the exact same ones. Okay. This, oh, sorry. We're gonna skip over this one. This is where we, originally this was two simple sentences that we tried to join, and we tried to think of where we would join them. Here, we've joined them by place, and you can see in the middle, wherever is how we're connecting them. The soldiers laid the bomb, that could stand on its own. Wherever they could find hiding spots, that's connecting the two sentences by the concept of place. Time. I will work part-time once the baby is born in June. So once is our subordinating conjunction, and it's explaining a time frame. Cause and effect. The plants died because the dogs kept digging in the garden. Because explains that there's a reason for it. He woke up refreshed as if he had not been working for 2 weeks straight. They're making a comparison there. Oh, this one still has it. Even though he wanted to move, his wife was comfortable in their old city. So they have two different feelings, even though is setting up that contrast. Conditions. I will make you a nice supper if you pay for all the groceries. If is the condition. I will let you borrow the car, even though you didn't remember to put gas in it last time. Okay, so moving on to the next learning goal. I can revise drafts to ensure that ideas are presented in a logical order. Now, according to the format, right? Different formats have a different type of order that they expect, so you got to be careful of that. I can add details, delete unnecessary information, and ensure that the tone and level of language is appropriate to the audience and to its purpose. Now, I still have some people out there who have the previous year's course, and if you have that, you would have this assignment. Now, this is very similar to today's assignment. All I've really done is tried to make it more clear what I'm expecting, because I found a lot of people weren't quite understanding what this was asking. So they were skipping the first half and losing a good chunk of marks because of that. So I'm giving you the new assignment, and I would prefer if you did this because I think it's easier to understand, okay? So it's a two-parter, just like assignment 12 was a two-parter, this is a two-parter as well. Part A. If you did not send me a clean copy of your assignment 12 part B, do that right away. Don't do anything else before you do that. Make sure it's clean, it's beautiful, it looks great. Take a picture or photocopy it or whatever. Email that to me, then go on to the next step, okay? I need to see that so that I can mark assignment 13. If you didn't do assignment 12, you need to stop, go back, and finish assignment 12 first. There is no way for me to mark assignment 13 without seeing assignment 12 because I'm comparing the two. Without the first assignment, I can't compare all your changes, okay? Now, once you've sent that to me, and you've got one copy for yourself and one copy is sent to me, on the copy that's for yourself, you can begin to make some revisions, okay? On the next slide, or actually about 2 slides from here, I'm going to give you a little list of some possible revisions that you can make. And I want you to pick at least 6 of them and use them to improve your rough copy from assignment 12. I was trying to explain this assignment to one person one time, and they just thought the idea was to change it. And I felt sad because they actually made their writing worse. Because they just kind of went from one word to another word, and they weren't really getting the overall idea. They just thought I wanted to see changes. They didn't get that I was trying to get you to improve the writing. So that's kind of that's the overall goal, right? The revisions are what I'm looking at, but we're trying to find the overall goal of making it better, okay? So please underline any place where you make revisions, and on it, you're going to write the number of what type of revision you made. Number is it's going to be in my charts. I'll show you that in a minute, okay? I'm giving 2 marks for each successful revision. of category. So if you make like 10 spelling mistakes, I'm not giving you 2 marks for fixing each spelling mistake. I'm giving you 2 marks for fixing your spelling mistakes, okay? Because what's happening is some people are making spelling mistakes, I think on purpose maybe, and then just fixing spelling mistakes. Or they're like not putting a capital letter and then fixing that, but they're not making any really strong fundamental changes in their writing. So that's what we're gonna kind of focus on today, all right? In general, when you're trying to revise any kind of writing, not just today's writing, but any kind of writing, one way you can think about it is using the acronym ARMS, okay? And each of those letters stands for something. A stands for add, R stands for remove, M stands for move, and S stands for substitute. And I'm going to expand on that. So the add is you can add details, examples, and sentences that help explain your ideas more thoroughly. R stands for remove. You can remove repetitive or off-topic sentences that aren't needed or talk about information that's already been given. M is you can move words, phrases, sentences, and paragraphs around to reorganize your topics, arguments, or thinking so that your meaning is more clear. And then finally, S is for substitute. You can substitute or trade words, phrases, or sentences that improve the level of your language, like your vocabulary, or make your writing more detailed, descriptive, and interesting. So in the checklist that I've included, I've given you some very specific examples that kind of expand on these categories. Last year, I was being very general, but I found that that wasn't really giving students enough ideas. So this year, I'm being really kind of probably overly specific, but hopefully it will give you some ideas of some things you can do to look at your writing and make it better. Because I think it's a very hard concept for people, right? Sometimes people just feel like, oh, I've already written everything I know how to do. I don't know how to make it better. So here are some ideas. These are types of revision. Number 1, you could add at least 3 new sentences to any part of it that gives more information or details. Number 2, you can add another paragraph to add a lot, significantly more details. Number 3, you can create 2 new compound or complex sentences by adding details or joining 2 smaller sentences together. Number 4, I can add another quotation from a new person, which adds relevant information about the event or feelings about the event. Remember, we're revising assignment 12, which is all about the events in chapter 1 of our novel, Jimmy Comes Home. Number 5, you can make improvements to the point of view or to the objective tone so your writing sounds more like a reporter. This is a big one for some people. Number 6, make improvements so it follows the inverted triangle news story format. We talked a lot about this on assignment 12. If you are not remembering, go back and look at that to kind of understand what you should be aiming for, okay? Number 7, improve the vocabulary or word choice for at least 3 words. Number 8, add at least 2 adverb phrases that help indicate time, manner, cause, location for some sort of action. Number 9, improve at least 3 usage errors. Now, those can be anything. I'm giving you some examples here, though. For example, you could make sure that you add articles, a, an, or the to singular nouns. That's a really common usage error I see. Go through and look for your nouns and add articles. That's a great one to fix. The other one is, it says create subject and very agreement. It's supposed to be subject and verb. My apologies. I can't fix it right now because it's a picture, not the actual text. I'm going to talk more about subject-verb agreement. We haven't really, I don't think we've discussed it yet this term. Number 10, fix any sentence errors from assignment 12, things like run-on errors, comma splice errors, and incomplete sentences. I will talk more about that in a few minutes. And then number 11, fix any incomplete sentences. Oh, it's kind of the same thing as number 10. Any incomplete sentences from assignment 12. And then fix any punctuation or capitalization errors from assignment 12. If you think of a revision that I haven't kind of thought of here, call me, let me know what you're thinking of doing. I probably will be fine with it. It's just, I'm kind of, like I said, trying to make some very specific ideas for people because this part of the assignment was so challenging for people last year. Okay, so here would be, say, somebody's good copy, okay? And this is what you would have sent to me from assignment 12, and you would have a copy for yourself. So you get a copy and I get a copy. And then you would look at it and then you would start to think about what are some ways that I can make changes to improve this. So I'm going to read it just so you guys have an idea of it. Youth given a new start, September 3rd, 2024. Green Star Lake Chief and Council is pleased to announce the return of a local youth who had finally been released from custody after 18 months in juvenile detention for arson and burglary. The youth arrived by plane today, accompanied by probation officer Frank Williams, and will be under the supervision of his kukum. Deputy Chief Ryan Loon explained, "We are always happy to have our youth return back to our community. Everybody deserves a second chance." However, others in the community expressed some anxiety over the return. One resident, who declined to give his name, said, "I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't believe people ever really change." So now I would look at that and I would look at my revisions and I would try and think of ways to fix things, okay? So here is what some people are doing. They've really only identified two small little problems. They changed a word and they changed a capital. Okay. In this case, you haven't really revised. You've just neatened it up, right? People will like do this in handwriting, then they'll do this in typing. Nothing has significantly really changed. It's exactly the same. Okay. That is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more like this. Okay, so here's my rough copy. This is my news story about chapter 1 in the book, Jimmy Comes Home. Jimmy is on the plane flying home, but he does not want to be there at all. He gets scared when he sees the RCMP and the police at the airport. His probation officer is able to calm him down, but Jimmy is convinced that he is not really welcome here and that they are looking for a way to send him home. Okay. So right away, I would say, this doesn't sound like a news story already, right? This first sentence where I'm saying this is my news story, that isn't how reporters write, okay? So you don't need to like announce the topic in this way. As long as your top of your page says assignment 13, I know what the topic is, okay? You want to dive right in to sounding like you are a professional reporter, okay? So I want to change the format. Remember the format for news stories out at the beginning, I have my lead, and my lead tells me all the main basics: who, what, where, why, when, how. I want to change the tone. Right now, this sounds like a summary, right? It sounds like I'm just telling you what happened, but that's not quite how news stories are, right? They follow that inverted triangle format. That is a huge part of this assignment. I am looking specifically for that format anytime I'm marking this. Assignment 12 and assignment 13. So if you're not sure, go back, take a look at it, take a look at our sample newspaper reports to get the idea down, okay? The other thing is, in my original, I'm talking a lot about Jimmy's feelings, but as a reporter, I can't see inside somebody's head. I might guess what they're feeling, but as a reporter, I can't write my guesses. I can only write what they actually say or what they actually do. So when you're writing a news report, you don't normally talk about people's feelings or their emotions or what they're thinking, okay? I know when we read the novel says all those kind of things. You've got to kind of translate it into reporter type language, okay? So over here in the yellow, I've got an example of the first few sentences. It's not the whole thing, right? This would not be my whole news report. It's way too short, but this is an example of how I might start. Officials stand at the airport waiting for a community youth to arrive back home. There was some delay in disboarding, which a pilot later reported to be due to the passenger refusing to get off the plane once he saw the police officers out front. Now, I haven't mentioned his name here because in real life, reporters often don't mention the names because youths are entitled to privacy. I know a lot of people do. I don't mark anybody wrong for that. When we're doing the assignment, it kind of makes sense. But that's why I haven't put the name there. The who is still community youth, right? What's happening? They're waiting for this person to arrive back home. Where is it? They're at the airport. When is it? I've kind of written it like it's right now. I probably should have written it like it happened yesterday or like later on this afternoon. I shouldn't have written it like it's happening right now. That's a mistake. Um, However, it's good that I said the pilot reported, because if I'm talking about information I didn't see myself and there's no like big legal issues, normally I would say where I got my information. The pilot said this, the nurse said that, the police officer said that. Now, sometimes there's reason for confidentiality and I just say like an unnamed source, but I don't just write it without explaining how I learned that, right? Okay, so we're going to go through that list of revisions. I'm going to up top look at what is the big revision strategy that we're trying to talk about. And then we're looking at what are the specific revision ideas I gave you. Okay. So number one, add at least 3 new sentences that give information or details, add another paragraph. So this is all part of the adding strategy. Create 2 new compound or complex sentences by adding details or joining 2 smaller sentences. Add another quotation from a new person, which adds relevant information about the event. Yep, the event. So number one, when I say add at least 3 new sentences, those can be spread out. Like maybe you have an idea for something more you want to add to each paragraph, or maybe you have a whole idea for 3 new sentences you want to write at once. Adding a whole nother paragraph is a great way to make your story longer and usually more interesting. Okay, number 3, we spent the first 10-15 minutes talking about how to write a compound or a complex sentence. Take a look at what you've written so far and see, is there a way that you could join 2 smaller sentences, or you could add more information that would create a compound or a complex sentence? Number 4, you can add a quotation from a new person. This is a really good idea. Like if you've given a quote from someone from Jimmy's family, maybe you want to give a quote from a band counselor or a policeman or someone who might have a different point of view about the event going on, right? That's the big idea, is having a quotation that represents more than one point of view is generally considered to be a good way to show balanced and fair writing, rather than just kind of favoring one side. Okay, next we're looking at removing stuff. Okay, for this one, and I didn't actually mention this, removing anything that's repetitive or off topic is an enormously good start. I will happily take that and count that if you want to do that. Okay, hopefully you already did that in assignment 12, but maybe you didn't. The other thing I'm looking at is making improvements to the point of view or the objective tone so it sounds more like a reporter. And this is where occasionally I get people who will write the reporter like, I saw this, I felt that, I did this, but that's not how newspaper articles sound. So you want to remove that. That's why it's in the removal section. Remove the word I and change it to a third person or a more neutral phrase, like the witness saw him do it, or a witness saw him do it. Sometimes people even say this reporter saw it. It's just considered a more appropriate tone, okay? Remove any opinions you have of the events or the people. You don't want to say things like this terrible event or this horrible person. That's putting your opinion into the article, and we're not supposed to do that when we're doing journalistic writing, okay? Now, you can quote somebody who says that, right? If somebody says, oh, I wish this terrible kid wasn't coming here, you can say that, right? You should have a reason for saying it. You don't want to just badmouth this person for no reason. But if you're trying to show that not everybody is happy that Jimmy's coming home, that's perfectly valid. I would also remove any information that is not related to the main idea of the story. So if you're writing all about Jimmy burning down the band office, then his Gookum saying hello to him doesn't really relate to the main topic. Take it out. And obviously remove any repetitive information that you've already covered in other parts of your news story. And then moving words, phrases, or sentences. This is one of those things where sometimes if you write you sit down and pick up your pen and just start writing, sometimes it can be a little bit unorganized and you might I'm writing about this and I'm writing on a new topic. Oh, wait, I thought of something that goes back with the first topic. So that's what this is addressing, where when you're looking at it, you're like, huh, this first part is talking about burning down the office. And then I started talking about juvie. And then all of a sudden I'm talking about the band office again. I probably should move that sentence so it's back with the first part so it all makes sense, right? So we're trying to like fix our organizing if there's a problem with the organizing. The other thing is you're, again, looking at inverted triangle news format. Does your lead paragraph summarize the main story and include who, what, where, when, and why and how? Does then your next couple paragraphs give relevant details to create a more complete picture of the event? This is often where you would have quotes from different people expressing their opinions. Remember that if you do that, every time a new person gives their opinion, you've got to put it in a new paragraph. And have you left your least important details, the things that don't really matter, to the very end of the story, right? Remember that the reason that we do that is because an editor might cut the bottom of the story. So anything important, you want to be way above kind of the mental cut line of that story. Okay. Then substitute. This is a general revision strategy where you basically look at your word choices, your phrases, and think about ways to make them more detailed or more vivid or more interesting. Sometimes if we're writing fast again, we might say the same word over and over and over again. And then when you go back to read it, it stands out as sounding a little bit boring, right? So then you go back in and change it. So number 7, improve. I don't know why it says improvement. I'm sorry, terrible. Improve the vocabulary or word choice. So this is where you could use a thesaurus. Thesauruses are available online. They are also available in print. If you have a learning center in your community, they almost certainly have thesauruses there. If you don't have one, you can always message us. We'd be happy to send some to you. It can help you pick words that might be more interesting or less repetitive, or sometimes express your meaning more clearly, right? Sometimes we get stuck and you can't think of a different way to say something. And then using a thesaurus can be really helpful. We do talk a little bit more about thesauruses later on in the book, this unit, but I'm just giving you a heads up now. The other big thing is be careful when you're writing not to use slang, right? Slang is those things where all the people your age would use it, but people that are way younger or people that are way older may not understand it, right? Because each time there's a new generation, each generation kind of makes up their own slang. So you want to use words that you're pretty sure everybody who reads the paper would be able to understand it, right? So words like Riz or Sigma, right? A lot of people aren't going to understand those, so you wouldn't use those, even if that's how you talk with your friends, right? You're kind of using more standard English here, okay? 8, I think I cover 8 on the next one. Let me see. Yep. Okay. 8 is a type of adding strategy, but it's near number 7 because they're both talking about how to improve your words and vocabulary. You could also add in adverb phrases, right? Things that might give more information about when actions are happening, the time, the manner, how they happened, cause, why they happened, or the location for an action, okay? Sometimes students are used to giving only the bare minimum when they're talking or they're writing. This is kind of your specific invitation to add on information that will make your sentence more interesting, more detailed, more informative. So let's say I have a sentence and this says, the man arrived by airplane. Okay, it's a bare bones sentence. It's valid. It's just not super interesting. It doesn't tell me enough information. So if I say yesterday morning, the man arrived by airplane, accompanied by his lawyer, now I've added 2 adverb phrases. I've added one that talks about morning, so time, and then one talks about who he's with, maybe the manner as far as that one goes. Due to his illness, the man arrived by airplane at the water base by the nursing station. Here we're talking about the reason or the cause of something happening, and then we're talking about the location. It makes a longer, more sophisticated sentence. Okay. The next part of the items in the checklist are really going to be talking more about editing than about revising. I just kind of included them all in one checklist to sort of make this step easier. I didn't want to have this assignment take forever. So we're going to kind of move into talking about editing right now. So this goes to the learning goal where we're trying to achieve accuracy in using conventions. And conventions is just kind of a big category that includes grammar, usage mistakes, spelling mistakes, and punctuation. Okay. Okay. So, oh, hang on a second. Okay, yeah. This is one I kind of debated back and forth about whether to put it in with revisions or whether to put it in with editing. I'm putting it in with editing because I think this is where most people will think of it. It's kind of a gray area because it's going to affect punctuation and capitalization. That's why I have it over here in editing, okay? So I'm skipping over number 9. Number 10 says fixing any sentence errors from assignment 12. And I kind of ran 11 and 12 and 10 together. Run-on sentences, comma splice errors, and then incomplete sentences. And number 11 is the same thing, basically. So let's talk about those types of sentence errors, okay? Run-on sentences are where you have several sentences joined together incorrectly. A comma splice error is where you've got usually 2 sentences joined incorrectly with just a comma. This is kind of a special version of a run-on sentence. And then incomplete sentences are sentence fragments where it doesn't have a whole subject or a whole predicate, or maybe it doesn't express a complete thought. I'm going to talk about these separately because they're different issues and you fix them in different ways. But I've grouped them together because they all have the same effect on the reader. When you make these kind of mistakes, the reader isn't sure what's the main subject, what's the topic, and it can make it unclear what action is happening. So you do want to try and tackle these in your revising because it can really affect the meaning you're trying to get across to your readers or your audience. Run-on sentences are probably the biggest editing mistake I make, okay? I have had people sometimes just forget to use any kind of periods at all for an entire paragraph or even an entire page of writing. This can be exhausting to read, okay? It's a little like someone's talking so fast and they never give you a chance to respond or even to think about what they're saying. When you use end punctuation like periods or exclamation points or question marks, it gives the reader's brain a chance to pause and sort of check that they understand your meaning, and then they can go on. When you don't do that, it gives the reader kind of a rushed feeling. And I think this lack of punctuation may be in part due to like Facebook and Messenger texts, because when we do those kind of texts, we often don't use periods, but that's usually much shorter and it's casual writing between friends, which is sort of more like a conversation, right? And if your reader is confused, they just ask you questions to clarify your meaning right away. But for academic writing, we have to make our sentences clear. And one big reason is I am often nowhere near you to be able to ask questions that would help me understand your meaning, right? So when I'm reading it, if it's unclear, I'm just making my best guess. And that may not be what you actually intended. So you want to make sure what you are trying to say is what ends up on paper. So that's what we're kind of talking about basically. Okay. Technically, a run-on sentence is any sentence where 2 or more independent clauses are joined together or like run together incorrectly. However, when I wrote this, I was really thinking about times where people just kept joining 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 sentences together into one entire paragraph. Sometimes they simply put a comma there, but more often they'll join the sentences with phrases like and then, or so. So here's an example. In the summer, I went blueberry picking with my cousins, and I went fishing with them a lot. And we also went up to Fort Hope to visit some family. And then we went to Thunder Bay to do some shopping. And after that, we hung out at Dryden Fair and went on a bunch of rides, and it was so much fun. So that is a huge run-on sentence. There are a lot of smaller sentences in there. I need to go back through and shorten some of those sentences up to make it easier to read and to make sure my meaning gets across. Okay. If you're not sure how to fix this, there are 2 kind of things you can look for. One big clue would be a comma. Not every time you have a comma would you want to change it into a period, but a lot of times people have used the comma instead of the period. So if I said in the summer, I wouldn't put a period there because in the summer isn't a complete thought. But if I said in the summer I went blueberry picking with my cousins, that's a complete thought. So I would change that comma and put a period there, okay? And I went fishing. I don't need the and. It doesn't really add anything to the sentence. I could just get right rid of this. I'm just going to underline it right now. I would actually like strike it out, but it's hard to do this strikeout in Google. There is a way to do it, but it's kind of a bit fussy. I would just start with I. I went fishing with them a lot. Now, the other thing you can look for is conjunctions. A lot of times what's happening is they're kind of overusing conjunctions, and I don't need it again. I'm going to put a period. I don't need the word and. I'm going to cross it off. I'm going to underline just in case instead. We also went to Fort Hope. Now, here's what I'm talking about where I say it sort of affects capitalization. We was lowercase because it was in the middle of a sentence, but now it's the first word in a sentence. So now I would need to go back through and make that a capital letter. So that's why it's kind of in the editing section. We also went up to Fort Hope to visit some family. And then, I don't need the and then, I'm just going to kind of cross that off and put a period before it. Okay? Same thing. I've got the we. That's the beginning of my sentence now. So I want to change it and turn it into that. Now, I'm kind of doing with typing, but what we should really be doing, I'm sorry, I should grab my my scribble thing here, is technically I would, hang on, I'll do it somewhere else. Let me see. After, I would cross off the A. Sorry. This is why I don't do it this way because it doesn't show up. Let me see, with a blue maybe, and I'll make it nice and fat so you can see it. Okay, so I crossed it off, and then over top, I would write the letter that I want instead, okay? If you leave some spaces when you do, sorry, that is so small, it's gonna be pretty hard to see, I apologize. That's why I don't normally do it this way, but I wanted to make sure it was really clear. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Okay, you can see it. It's kind of small, but I think you can see it. I'll make it bigger for a second so it's really obvious. Oh, that's not very big. Hang on. Okay, so you can see my little A there. If you leave a little bit of space when you do your initial typing or writing, it gives you a place to write these little corrections so that it makes sense, okay? Now, this isn't 100%. I still need to cross off that. And I would put a period here. And there's a couple more corrections. But all of a sudden, I've turned that one long sentence into here's one sentence, two, 3, 4, 5, probably at least 6 or 7 sentences. This is an easy way to fix a run-on sentence, okay? It doesn't really take too long. The other really common one is a comma splice sentence. Sometimes people just connect the sentences with a comma over and over again. I'm gonna take these as 2 separate ones just to make it easier, okay, guys? Okay, so the first one, if I want to fix this, I would just put a conjunction here, right? And is the most neutral one. You can almost always add the word and. So I could just put that there. And now it's not a run-on sentence. Now it makes sense. Okay. The other thing I could do is I could just split it into 2 sentences. That's what I've done down here. I was glad to try going back to school, period. It was a chance for a new start. That's a fine way to do it as well. Okay. Comma splice errors, I can fix them with a semicolon. Same sentence, instead of putting a comma, I change it to a semicolon. A semicolon is one you can use as long as it would be a complete sentence. Normally, though, we only use it to connect 2 sentences that are related, and you wouldn't want to keep on connecting sentence after sentence. I've had a few people do that. try to only use it for 2 sentences, okay? That's really all that makes sense. Now, this remains a lowercase letter because I haven't started a whole new sentence. Now I'm almost at the end of my time, and we will see how we do here. Okay. I'm going to put a little star here just to let me know when I come back where we have a little heart there. Okay. So we got to talking about incomplete sentences. Okay. We haven't quite finished going through that checklist. We will cover the rest of that checklist on Thursday. This is a major assignment. It is worth 30 marks. You want to take the time to do it properly. Okay. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you guys on Thursday.